talking to. Yeah, you gotta ask him individually. Although we don't have time for that. So.
I'm gonna ask for this.
Just ask everybody.
Okay. Is there anything in particular that you all would like to see from the teams in this round?
Good arguments. Tag and label your arguments according to the stocking sheets, if you can.
Okay.
Also, make sure that you show us which point you're responding to in the other person's speech.
So not in the 180, in like 280 or 1N or
yeah.
Okay.
So not for you, but other people.
Okay.
Much composure, grace, and a willingness to accept the opposing team's argument if they say something and you cannot refute it.
Respect. Respectful attitudes, words, gestures, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control.
Fruit of the Spirit.
The fruits of the Spirit. Good. Any others? Okay. All right. You may begin when you're ready.
Two new reports indicate that under Bush, the Army is overstretched and under enormous strain. The National Guard and Reserves have been weakened, and we are experiencing numerous recruiting problems. The quote from Jim Clyburn, a congressman in South Carolina, encompasses the numerous problems our country's defense system is encountering. More specifically, since this time the burdens on the National Guard have increased and the sole purpose has been skewed. This is why the affirmative team stands resolved. The United States federal government should reinstate a mandatory military draft. First, let's start off with some definitions. Definition 1, reinstate, to begin using or dealing with. Definition 2, mandatory, required by law or rule. Definition 3, military, of or relating to soldiers or the armed forces. Definition 4, draft, a system in which young people are required to join the armed forces of a country for a period of service. Definition 5, National Guard, a military establishment serving as a national constabulary and defense force. Our criterion for this round is net benefits. The affirmative team proposes that the team that wins this round will be the one who can save the most money for the United States while improving the defense of the country. Let's start off with some inherency points. The National Guard sees a bigger role. From HereAndNow.com, October 10th, 2011. Here are some statistics about the National Guard from HereAndNow.com. Many National Guardsmen and women have been on multiple combat deployments. 1 in 10 troops killed in action since 2001 was a member of the National Guard. The suicide rate among the National Guard has increased. One study found that Guard members develop PTSD 29% more often than active duty military. Let's move on to some harms. Harm number 1, recruiting goals not met. The recruiting goals not met. From the Department of Defense in 2015, they announced their retention and recruiting numbers. The recruiting statistics state 5 of the 6 reserve components met or exceeded their fiscal year-to-date numeral ascension goals through November 2014. But the Army National Guard only reached 89% of their goal, which was not good. Harm number 2, foreign wars are not the purpose. Foreign wars are not the purpose. From the Veterans Employee Toolkit, April 6, 2012. The National Guard consists of the Army National Guard and the Air Force's Air National Guard. While federally funded, the National Guard is organized and controlled by the state. However, in times of war, the National Guard can become federalized and deployed. The National Guard engages in a number of activities. During local emergencies, National Guard units assist communities endangered by storms, floods, fires, and other disasters. National Guard companies deployed overseas may see combat, but are more often building schools and hospitals, training local peacekeepers, or teaching local farmers more efficient farming techniques and better ways to use their land. From HereAndNow.com, October 6, 2011. Almost half of the U.S. fighting force in Iraq and Afghanistan is National Guard, and they've historically been involved in wars. As seen above, war was not the original intent of the National Guard. The impact of this harm is that the Army National Guard was the only reserve component that did not meet its recruiting goal, and even though they are understaffed, they are still used in foreign wars, altogether weakening the Guard. This leads us to our plan. Mandate 1. All men ages 18 to 20 will be conscripted to the Army National Guard. These men will have the option to volunteer for active duty in any other military branch instead of the National Guard. All of these men will undergo 5 weeks of basic training, 2 days every month training, and 1 yearly combat drill. These men are only required to complete 18 months of service. Mandate 2. The men drafted into the reserves under this plan will only be called into active duty if and only if there is a natural disaster near them, or if the United States is invaded by a foreign army. The National Guard will no longer be allowed to participate in any foreign wars because the purpose of the National Guard is to defend the homeland. Mandate number 3. This plan will reinstate the draft lottery for men ages 18 to 20. The administration that will complete this is the President of the United States and the U.S. Congress. The enforcement of this plan will be the Selective Service System and any other necessary agencies. The funding for this plan will come from cutting some of the $37 billion in foreign aid going to countries like Egypt, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. This money will be used to cover the cost of equipping and training the new conscripts. We as the affirmative team reserve the right to clarify our plan in later speeches if necessary. This takes us to our advantages. Advantage number 1, promotes national unity. Promotes national unity. From Connect US, mandatory military service can promote national unity in many ways. First, it allows citizens to learn and train together, creating that shared experience of having served in the military. Then, there is also the general understanding of what life in the Army is like, what is required of the job, and what has been done in order to protect our country. Citizens are able to understand and develop appreciation for the sacrifices that people in the military made for our country, and all of these can bring people together, especially when dealing with a cultural or political threat from other nations. Advantage number 2, states' rights and constitutional rights restored. States' rights and constitutional rights restored. By Maya Schweinwer, February 2009. The President can call upon the state's guards units in time of war, but when the mandate for war becomes obsolete, say members of the bring the guard home. It's the law campaign. Sending those troops overseas is illegal. Bring the Guard Home members and their allies are now sponsoring a chain of bills and resolutions in states across the country demanding an investigation into the legality of deploying the Guard to Iraq and a refusal to comply with any illegal federal orders. There is not congressional authorization for the use of the Guard today, Vermont State Representative Mike Fisher told Truth Out. One Guard member improperly called into federal service to fight a war. That's a real problem. Choosing to go to war is one of the most serious decisions we make. The very least we can do is follow the Constitution. In summary, the Army National Guard's recruiting goals were not met. In addition, the National Guard is not intended to be fighting foreign wars. Our plan encompasses 18 to 20-year-old men being drafted into the Army National Guard. They would not be sent to fight foreign wars. This plan will promote national unity and restore state and constitutional rights. A quote from Noah Koch in conclusion. The draft furthered the work begun during the Civil War. It advanced the business of making us one people. The draftees may not have liked being pulled away from their careers that awaited them and being thrown into with people they probably wouldn't have associated with otherwise. But over the 2-year span of their service, there were a sea of changes. The disaffected became the committed, became leaders who demanded the best of others, and especially of themselves. They saluted with a snap indistinguishable from another. This is what America needs, to be adequately prepared, funded, and staffed for homeland emergencies. I now stand open for cross-examination.
Can we, a little bit of prep time?
No, not for cross-ex.
Oh, no, okay. All right.
This is prep time right here.
Ah, okay. Do I ask if the timers are ready?
Oh yeah, am I timing this?
Oh.
Yeah, sorry.
And then write down.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, you just start and I'll start.
Okay. In your plan, you mentioned natural disasters. What constitutes as a natural disaster?
In the plan we said floods, fires, and in Harm 1 we said that local emergencies, communities endangered by storms, floods, fires, and other disasters.
Okay, thank you. And you decided upon yearly drills for all recruits?
Yes,
And why did you decide upon that?
because it just keeps them in the loop so that they stay.
Okay, thank you. And you talked about recruiting goals not met. Do you know how many people are actually in the all-volunteer force right now?
Yes, I have the numbers. It's 7,305 of their goal. of 8,128.
8,000. That's how many they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So they got more than they needed.
No, they got less than they needed. They only met 89% of their goal.
Okay. And how much would your draft cost? Because you said that it would be taken from the aid of other countries. You know how much it would actually cost
$37 billion.
overall?
Well, that's what we would take.
So you would take, oh, so you would take $37 billion from each of the aids to other countries?
Yes.
For your draft. Okay. Thank you.
Starting negative prep time. Do you need it?
No.
Okay.
That's legal. Okay. When the affirmative team mentioned their resolution today, they said that reinstate. That is actually not the resolution that was given to us. The resolution was that the United States should reinstitute the mandatory military draft, and they said reinstate. So we believe that that is actually outside the bounds of the resolution since it is different from the resolution. And also, they said that they mentioned natural disasters as floods, fires, local emergency storms, and disasters. Well, that doesn't seem like that would be a good cause to bring out the military. And also, for their plan, they mentioned cutting foreign aid. That is a completely different plan. By cutting foreign aid, that is outside of the bounds of the resolution because we are not talking about that today. We were talking about the military draft. So cutting foreign aid would be a completely different topic. And also, they mentioned that there would be yearly drills in their plan. Well, we don't believe that they are specific enough about what the drills are for or why it is only once a year. From militaryrates.com, quote, National Guard and Reserve perform a minimum of 1 weekend drill per month and 2 weeks per year of active duty for training. Compensation for drill is monthly drill pay equal to 1 day's active duty base pay for each drill period. There are 4 drill periods in 1 weekend drill. So you may be asking why this is relevant. Well, we believe it's relevant because everyone agrees we all want the best possible military. We just are debating differently about how to achieve that. Well, if the drill is only once a year, how can soldiers be fully prepared and equipped? The monthly drill that is enacted now seems to be working better than the yearly draft would. And also, we would like to define a few terms. We would like to define reinstitute from Merriam-Webster.com as again, back to an original place, condition, etc., and draft, also from Merriam-Webster.com, as a system in which young people are required to join the armed forces of a country for a period of service. These are the definitions that we believe we will stand by as accurate and precise. And the affirmative team has violated the resolution by proposing a plan that is different from what the resolution states. The resolution states reinstitute, and the affirmative team is suggesting we reform, and we're changing. So this is different than what the resolution is. We also believe another important reason why we do not need the draft is because the military draft is not constitutional. So it violates the 13th Amendment of the Constitution. The 13th Amendment of the Constitution declared that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So this was formally abolishing slavery in the United States, and also
conscription, or the military draft, it is a form of slavery because it is something you are forced to do. So, this is from 10thamendmentcenter.com. Quote, "The most important argument against the draft is moral. Whatever the excuse given for its implementation, the draft is a form of slavery, period. Forcing someone to work for the state, forcing someone to kill or be killed, forcing someone to do anything at the point of a gun under threat of prison or even death is involuntary servitude. Of all the forms of slavery that have existed throughout history, forcing someone to fight and die in war is by far the most disgusting and is a form of murder against all who don't survive." Even Ronald Reagan, writing in Human Events back in 1979, made a clear case against the draft. Quote, "Conscription rests on the assumption that your kids belong to the state. If we buy that assumption, then it is for the state, not for parents, the community, the religious institutions, or teachers to decide who shall have what values, and who shall do what work, when, where, and how in our society. That assumption isn't a new one." Reagan understood that America was founded on the principle of individual liberty, that the government exists to serve the people. The idea of slavery, whatever form it is morally repugnant to the ideals of a free society. Also, having the draft will cause more wars. So when they said that it would promote national unity and states' rights, constitutional rights restored, actually this is not true, because how can our states and our unity, how can this all be restored if there are going to be more wars, thus more fighting? From 10thamendmentcenter.com, quote, "Without the draft, unpopular wars are very difficult to fight. The ability to use conscription actually encourages politicians to wage even more wars. The massive resources are a temptation that is hard for the war lover to resist." When the draft finally undermined in the 1970s, for example, the Vietnam War ended. And also they mentioned that the all-volunteer draft, it seemed like in their introduction they're saying that it was wearing out. Well, we have proof here that the all-volunteer force has not worn out. Actually, it has done exceedingly well. From WashingtonPost.com, quote, "The all-volunteer force has surpassed expectations. After more than a decade of sustaining combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan while meeting other global obligations, our force has been successful by virtually every measure. The total force concept, which I conceived, more closely links active duty, National Guard, and reserve military components. The volunteer military is more intelligent, fit, committed, and representative than ever. Moreover, it has proved more cost-effective than a draft force." Did they?
So you're ready for crossing sound.
Oh, I know. What is your definition of reinstate compared to reinstate? Well, our definition of reinstitute is again back to an original place, condition, etc. I do not have we don't have a definition of reinstate, but the reason I brought it up was because it was different from the original resolution.
Okay, thank you. Have you done any research on the National Guard?
Some research, but we don't have it directly in this brief.
Okay, thank you. And what do you believe that our yearly drill is?
We just have the information you gave saying the yearly drill combat training. That's all we got for that.
Do you have any evidence to support that?
To support what?
The yearly combat drill?
Just the evidence that you've given.
Okay, thank you.
You mean affirmative?
Affirmative prep time. We'll take some free prep time though.
Are you timing that?
Doesn't really matter though, actually. I mean, I don't have to keep track of it. You just get some max of 5 minutes.
Because it's only half. Should I stop recording?
1 minute used, 4 minutes remaining.
So use all 5 minutes.
Refutation is just how they responded, right? Nobody's judging me, brother. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
Two minutes used.
The refutation, that's, we're not doing that one because we don't do the
No, no. Just repeating arguments.
Okay, so that's what we'll see on this round. The second two speeches. But when will Madeline get up to do refutation?
Well, she has reputation. She does. So she's the only one who actually crossed it out.
Okay. Sarah will have refutation. Sarah will have refutation when she cross-examines.
No, she already did. She responded to it.
That was her refutation, got it.
3 minutes used.
So when it says cross-examination under their name, that's how they responded to the cross-examination, or that's how they cross-examined?
Both.
Okay. Yes. Okay, so Madeline is not gonna have refutation. Okay. 1A speaker, only because we don't go to the rebuttals, but everybody else will have refutation.
Me too.
No, cross-examination, that will be her response and her cross-examination. Her response to cross-examination and her cross-examining will be just that cross-examination score. You'll combine those two.
I just took off my score for refutation.
Yeah, just scratch it out.
4 minutes used, 1 minute remaining.
So Sarah's, you won't be able to, you'll have to wait on her cross-examination because she hasn't cross-examined anybody yet. She's only been cross-examined, yeah. So when you don't get to see, like Sarah's, we saw her get cross-examined, but then she still needs two cross-examinations. Do you like put a little mark next to how she felt she was cross-examined so that when you judge the other part of it, you're able to put a total score?
It just depends on what 15 seconds remaining. Five seconds remaining. Time.
Alright, is everyone ready? Timers? Alright, then I'll begin. Well, first off, in the second affirmative speech, I would like to clarify some things that the negative team got kind of jumbled and they twisted a little bit. First off, they had some questions in their cross-examination about our yearly drills, and the reason is the National Guard is not a permanently active force. They are part-time, like working part-time at McDonald's or something like that. They do drills once a month. That's how they are today. That's how they will be under our plan. So the yearly drill will just be a combat drill. It'll do different things than they would normally do in the weekly or monthly drill. Specifically, I would like to show you where that is under Mandate 1. It says, all of these men will undergo 5 weeks of basic training, 2 days every month training, and 1 yearly combat drill. So clearly we see that, I don't know what the negative team said in their cross-examination, but it was a little different, so I just want to clarify that. Now, under their topicality arguments, I don't have them tagged specifically, but they said that we are cutting foreign aid, and they said that this was a disadvantage. I would just like to bring up the fact that, or they said it was actually not topical at all. I would just like to say that that's not our actual plan. This is just how we are obtaining the money for our plan. I don't see the reason why we should actually give money to Egypt, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and other countries that hate us. So why not use this money to further our national defense? So that's all we're doing with that. It's clearly topical, and that's not our actual plan. Also, they brought up our definition of reinstitute, which was a bit of a problem on our part. However, I believe they said that reinstate, or was it reinstitute, they said was in the real resolution. We put reinstate in ours, and the difference between those is very slim, so I don't think that will actually affect the topicality in today's debate round. They also said that they made the assumption that we were not short-staffed, and I would just like to reread the impact, or the evidence that said that, well, I'll just read this evidence from Veteran Employee Toolkit handout. It was April 6, 2012. That's wrong, that's, hold on. Column 1, column 2. Yeah, so basically what this evidence is saying, this is from DoD, defense.gov. The National Guard was the only reserve component out of 6, or 5, excuse me. They were the only reserve component out of all of them that fell short of their recruiting goals, making 89% instead of 100. All of the others surpassed their goals. The National Guard was the only one that did not. Now I'd like to move on to some arguments that they made. I don't remember exactly what they're tagged under because I don't think they were tagged. And the first one was the 13th Amendment is violated. You can tag this as the 13th Amendment is not violated. We use this, they brought up how the 13th Amendment says that slavery or involuntary servitude is strictly prohibited. However, how do we get the 13th Amendment, ladies and gentlemen? It was through the draft. The United States Army in the Civil War used the draft to pass the 13th Amendment. We've also used the draft in World War I, the Civil War, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam. We used it all the way from 1939, ladies and gentlemen, to 1973. They also brought up the fact that somehow this plan is going to create more wars. I would just like to say, really? Our plan specifically states in Mandate 2, I would just like to read this to you, and you can decide this for yourself. The men drafted into the reserves under this plan will be called into active duty if and only if there is a natural disaster near them, or if the United States is invaded by a foreign army. The National Guard will no longer be allowed to participate in any foreign wars because the purpose of the National Guard is to defend the homeland. And I believe they also brought up some argument that said that we said that the volunteer army is wearing out. I think they got that from the same evidence I just read a minute ago, and that was just stating that the National Guard is the only reserve component that fell short. Now I would just like to move on to some advantages of our case. If it were to pass, these are some things that would further the United States defense interests. And you can tag this as generals are on the side of the Fed. Generals are on the side of the Fed. This is from February 2009 by Maya Shinwar from truthout.org. And the whole point of this article is basically saying that that the state guards of the National Guard are angry at the federal government because they've been fighting in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan when their duties are specifically to stay at home and help the people at home. I would just like to read some quotes from this. This is from General Fisher. We believe that it would be a good thing for a court to be asked the question of whether a state guard can be brought into federal service to fight an overseas war other than in an emergency that does not have proper congressional authorization. This is from General Mansky. We're supposed to have national defense that's based on the citizen soldier. That's the National Guard. They're citizens, even though they are dressed as soldiers, because that's their job is to defend the homeland. They're citizens. They work part-time in the military. They're not active duty enlisted soldiers. This is back to the quote. He said, and decentralized as a result. What the federal government has done and what the states have allowed it to do is transform the National Guard into the reserve for an expanded military and for the policy of empire building. We'll move on to another quote here. This is also from General Fisher. Article 1 of the Constitution gives the Congress the power to declare war, and Article 2 gives the President the power to be Commander-in-Chief. It seems the Founding Fathers intentionally delivered us this tension because they understood the dangers of executive power. They also positioned a large part of the military in the state's control for this very reason. The Guard, and this is not a quote, the Guard Initiative activates another branch of opinion that was neglected throughout the Bush administration. That's the American people. Since the state level legislation hits closer to home, since state legislators interact with their constituents more regularly and on a more immediate level, the Bring the Guard Home campaign intends to provide a new effective outlet for citizens' voices. So the impact of that is the United States citizens, the state citizens, are being neglected. You can write that down as an advantage that will be solved through our plan because the citizen soldiers and the citizens, they will have a voice and they will not be okay. And that's why we urge an affirmative ballot.
We have negative prep time, please.
Yeah. Starting negative prep time.
Okay, so when it does, you just do this and then they cut off. When you do that and they reach their time limit, they have to just hold it, but they don't get to finish their sentence.
No, we can't. I don't know why I did that.
Okay.
Isn't there a cross X?
Oh, that's right. I'm ready to be cross-examined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or should we not do it? Oh, we don't do it.
Not, we
Oh.
do cross
Oh
X.
yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we
Okay,
gotta
can
do
you,
that, yeah.
Yeah, pause negative time.
All right.
You got 26 seconds of prep time.
Oh,
Or
I
left.
don't- Uh-oh.
No, you used 26.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah,
I forgot something.
yeah. It's okay. We're all learning.
Okay.
Do we begin? Oh, okay. Hi. You said that, what was your, can you please give us the, citation from, or the citation from your, for your evidence from the 13th Amendment not being violated?
No, that was something I did not have evidence for. But my point was, the soldiers that got us the 13th Amendment used the draft. Therefore, it logically doesn't make sense for them to be fighting for something and using something that they're trying to condemn to get to this means. You follow me?
Thank you. And also, so you mentioned that there are still going to be the monthly drills as well in your plan?
Yeah, I was just clarifying because I think you brought something up and I just wanted to clarify that.
So how are the monthly drills and the yearly drills different? What are,
Specifically, the monthly drills are more like target practice, and in the National Guard, they're more like target practice and physical things. The yearly drill is more of a combat drill, so it'd be like, yeah.
okay, and
time. Thank you.
If she's done, yes. Sarah hasn't cross-examined. She's been cross-examined, so she hasn't. Oh, yeah, she just did. So, yeah. Using hers.
1 minute used.
Roland has not crossed.
4 minutes remaining.
He was cross-examined. He's still going to cross-examine. Yeah, so that means you can have sex.
Two minutes used.
Okay. Negative 5 times. We're good. Yeah.
One other thing about the timing. Okay. For the timing, so when 30 seconds, you do this. 10 seconds, just count down, and then back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I don't know how good I'm going to do after that. That was pretty awesome. After that footnote, the affirmative team talked about their recruiting goals not being met. Now, this was only for the National Guard. They did not bring up anything for all the other branches of the military. We actually have evidence from WashingtonPost.com that there was more than enough troops in our military. Quote, each year about 160,000 young men and women volunteer for active duty. An additional 110,000 volunteer for reserves, volunteer for the reserves. 25,000 others are commissioned as officers according to the Defense Department data. Last year marked the 27th consecutive year in which the Pentagon has exceeded its quality standards for active duty recruits. Half of all our recruits are in the top 2 of Armed Forces qualification Test 5 categories. Defense Department personnel data shows that with only 1% in the lowest. In the last year of the draft, only 1/3 of recruits were in the top 2 categories, with 25% in the lowest, whereas only 3/4 of youth nationwide graduate from high school. All military recruits are required to have graduated. During the last year of the draft, only half of the recruits were high school graduates. Now, the affirmative team also brought up that the 13th Amendment was violated, and as in cross-examination showed, they have no evidence for this, so we would like you to disregard that. Now we'd like to move on to disadvantages. There is, the affirmative team hit on that it is not slavery, going back to the 13th Amendment, but from airforcemen.com, quote, quite possibly the single biggest injustice that has been committed and is still being committed against men is military slavery, also known as conscription or compulsory military service. This involves a person, almost always a man, being forced to live in a place of his master's choice, usually a cramped room where he has to bunk with fellow slaves. He has to eat what his master gives him and has to obey their orders, even if doing so causes him discomfort, pain, or humiliation. Even he has to obey when he is ordered to kill other human beings or to risk his own life. For these services, he is paid only a pittance. Unlike chattel slavery, this servitude is temporary. There are also certain limits to what superior officers may order a military servant to do, but these are differences of degree, not of kind. Conscription and military service are still forced labor, which is a form of slavery. And also from the amendmentcenter.com. Quote, the most important argument against the military draft is moral. Whatever the excuse given for the implementation, the draft is a form of slavery, period. Forcing someone to work for the state, forcing someone to kill or be killed, forcing someone to do anything at the point of a gun, under threat, or prison, or even death. Now we'd like to look at why the status quo is fine. And this you can tag as why the status quo needs to be left alone. Why the status quo needs to be left alone. 1. The all-volunteer military has done exceedingly well. From WashingtonPost.com. The all-volunteer force, or AVF, has surpassed expectations. After more than a decade of sustaining combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, while meeting other global obligations, our force has been more successful by virtually every measure. The total force conception, which I conceived, more closely links active duty and reserve military components. The volunteer military is more intelligent, fit, and committed and representative than ever. Moreover, it has provided more cost-effective than a draft force. And we have a second quote from Cato.org. There is no doubt that the volunteer system has succeeded in peacetime. The military has no more trouble filling its ranks with top-quality people, young men and women who are, in fact, better educated and brighter than their civilian counterparts. During the first half of the fiscal year, 1990, for instance, 91% of new recruits had graduated from high school, compared with 75% of all 18 to 24-year-olds. 96% of enlistees scored in the top 3 of 5 categories of the Armed Forces Qualification Test, compared with just 96% of the civilian youth. The military achieved comparable results throughout the 1980s, despite predictions that continued economic growth would make recruiting difficult. Our AVF is quite effective. We have well-trained and highly educated people within our ranks. Thank you. And I will now stand open for cross-examination.
Hi, how are you?
I am awesome. How are you? Yeah.
Alright, I just got a couple questions for
Alright.
you. Do you realize that our plan is only dealing with the National Guard?
No, I was not under the impression that it was.
Okay. Do you realize that the standards for joining the military or being drafted will not change under current law? They will remain the same.
For only the National Guard or for everyone?
We're only dealing with the National Guard, but what I'm trying to ask you is, do you realize that the standards that we already have in place will stay?
Okay. Do I realize that? Yes.
Okay. Do you realize that under our plan, Mandate 2, we're not allowed to go to war?
You are not allowed to go to war, meaning you will not fight other people only when invaded?
Correct.
Okay.
And where was your last, I didn't understand the tagline or the evidence with when you brought up moral. What was that from?
Oh, the all-volunteer force thing?
I think it was the objection the draft was moral.
Yes, from theamendmentcenter.com. The most important argument against the draft is moral. Whatever the excuse given for its implementation, the draft is a form of slavery, period.
Okay. So, would you deem slavery as a morally wrong thing?
Yes.
So, would you deem using the draft to end slavery as morally wrong?
The draft ending slavery in America.
Like the Civil War. You brought that up earlier.
You brought that up in your.
Actually, I was responding to something that you brought up.
Um,
Or your partner brought up.
Slavery ending slavery. Isn't that ironic?
Yes or no, is that morally wrong?
Ending slavery?
Through the means of the draft.
You got me there. No.
So, would you deem defending the homeland through means of the draft or helping people through means of the draft as morally wrong?
We have no slavery in the U.S.
I'm talking about natural disasters or a foreign army invading the United States. Would you deem that morally wrong?
We don't need. We have help relief like Red Cross and stuff. We don't need the military to help.
Okay, question.
Others.
Does the Red Cross fight people?
Red Cross does not fight people.
Okay.
They fight germs though. 'Cause I
Did we ever say that the in our plan or anything in our speeches that the ABF is bad?
No, you did not. But you are trying to change the status quo, and the status quo is the all volunteer.
Does that mean that we're insinuating that the AFB is bad?
No,
Or
of course
ABF
not.
is bad.
But in debate,
Yes or
you're
no?
trying to no.
You realize that our plan will be cutting money, not spending money. Cutting foreign spending or foreign aid, and
Yes
bringing
and
it
no.
back here and spending it on
Yes
ourselves.
and no.
What do you mean by that?
Because you're cutting aid by giving money, but you're also going to spend that money that you cut. So okay,
Which-
yeah, in essence, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Has it been 3 minutes?
I know this seems kind
Are you timing?
I thought you were timing.
No.
Oh,
okay.
You're doing
Cross-examination.
I rest my case.
You guys survived.
Yay!
Anna.
No, I liked what you did, and yeah.
And also not
Just be careful with it. Sorry.
also not wasting time like in the cross examination.
Yeah,
and making
don't.
jokes.
Yeah, don't.
Well, maybe that was,
waste the
purposeful.
process time.
And that's
So yeah, it's fine. You
Okay.
just have to do it in the correct way.
okay. Cool.
Would you say the way he did it was?
Most of the time, yeah.
What would be? What would you say most of the time? What was there a
Don't.
part?
Yeah, don't. Just during cross-ex, don't waste his time.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Well, he asked me how was I doing. I said I'm awesome, and he's like,
Oh, that's fine.
No, I think
Okay, no, that
part
was fine.
well,
That
what do
was
you
fine.
refer to then?
Just like in general questions, like, give your answer, and it doesn't always have to have like.
Oh,
humor
the fighting
attached
germs
to
thing.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, like that.
Okay. All right.
But no, in your speeches, it's great. Sometimes it helps a lot.
Not just all.
I've gotten judges to laugh so hard sometimes.
It makes it less awkward too.
Yeah. I was shaking. It's the same thing with mock trial. I was shaking so bad I was afraid someone would see my head like going like that.
No.
Good. Other comments? Will? Got some?
It was pretty good. Your argumentation was pretty good.
That's good.
I was impressed the way
You're
the
up.
negative team came up to the bat. The affirmative team did a very good job organization-wise. Had your plan laid out, had your evidence organized, tagged. It is intimidating as the negative team to come up against. I think the nerves is just because yours, you don't get to come up with everything all in place, and then you have to work off of what they've said. And I think you guys did an excellent job gathering yourselves together to come up and actually have something to do battle with a little bit. I think that your organization of the questions, I have always watched these debates and wondered how would I ask questions. So the fact that you even came up with questions was excellent. I was very impressed with that. So I think you both did a very, very, very good job. All right, so Jeremy, will you put in your 2 cents here? Or
How long can I go?
however long you need.
Mr. Burns has a question.
Oh, do you?
yeah.
Sorry.
For Jeremy, or I guess you're going to talk a little bit about. Okay, you're probably going to answer my question.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
You had it counted as a double loss, and I was just wondering
Oh, that was
why
good fun.
why it's a double loss.
Yeah. So we're not deciding on who wins in this round. we're not giving a decision, so I just marked
So
double
he was
loss.
just
Oh.
being funny.
Yeah.
But
Double-
good question. Very
Yeah,
good question.
double loss is used when both teams are either being really disrespectful to each other, or you have problems with like the evidence on both sides, like they're not being ethical with their sources. Then you would do a double loss. Or you have one team that obviously won the round, but they were disrespectful to the other team. Then it would be a double loss too.
Can you have a double loss if the affirmative team doesn't make a great affirmative plan and the negative doesn't have a good negative plan to refute it? They were both bad? That wasn't
No.
the case today.
Yeah. It's kind of left up to you to decide. You have to kind of decide who wins. You can't just mark double loss. Double loss is used just for rule violations.
Okay.
So, yeah, when it comes down to that, you have to make a decision, and sometimes it's really hard.
But this was on full debate.
No, yeah.
Okay, good. So go ahead, Sarah.
Okay. So I'll talk about how much time do I have? I just want to know.
Talk about
Go
the
ahead.
affirmative.
How long was the whole debate? Did anybody time it?
Well, we started at like 8:35.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty. You guys spoke for a long time. Okay, I'm going to talk about your speaking styles and everything first, Madeline. Because it's prepared, like I can't say much about your speaking in general, but just make sure you slow down. It was really fast at some points, and you still had time when you finished, so you definitely had time to spread out some of the sections.
Well, I think
Will.
the reason I
She
was
started
speaking
reading the
faster-
case 4 days
I
ago.
read it. No. It was actually like 2 days ago. But
That's
I read
true.
it, and it was 9 minutes the first time I read it, because I was reading it through and
Yeah.
whatever, and I'm like, it's 9 minutes. We have to bring this down, and
Yeah.
so that's why I was trying to talk fast.
Yeah. No, I understand. I mean, it's hard when you haven't done it very much to know exactly. Will. Okay.
William.
Or William, yeah. Sorry. What's your twisted and distorted accusations against the
Oh.
team?
Did
That
I
was.
say distorted too?
I don't know. You said twisted, which I think
I
is
heard
worse.
twisted.
Really, William?
It was just horrible. They should not even be up here.
Well, it just sounded like they were
Violating the rules.
misrepresenting something
Yeah.
when you said it. It's not a big deal, but just make sure you use a little bit more gracious language.
I tried to after that. I kind of realized how that sounded, and
Maybe that wasn't such a good
they're
idea.
gonna get confused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah, make sure you tag your responses. So
That's
tell
what
me
I was
what
trying
you're
to
responding
I don't even know
to.
what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Tag.
Just tell me what you're responding to and tell me what it's labeled as. Like
What
the
they
tag,
said?
what the tagline, your new tagline is,
Oh.
your response.
Oh
You
yeah,
gotta
we
tag
did
your
that
responses.
once with the.
But nobody said like
It's 'cause I
they
didn't have-
didn't say the
I would've
tagline
responded
that
to
we
hers,
our
so
tagline
it's-
that they're responding to.
Yeah, so say you're responding to like, I don't know, harm number 1. So say I would like to respond to harm number 1 of recruiting goals not met. My response is tagline. And then state your evidence, provide your analysis. Also, make sure that you provide more analysis to the evidence that you read. You read a lot of evidence in your speech, but you didn't explain why that's important in the round. Okay, and you still had time left, so you had time to do that.
Oh, yeah.
I know it's hard.
We both had time left, and I totally was gonna bring up something that would have won us the round.
William almost went over.
Yeah, well that's fine.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, I
typical
I wasn't timing
actually.
myself, so then I had yeah.
So yeah, just expand upon the points more. Tell me why it's important that you're bringing up this point. Don't just state the point and then go to the next one. Did you have a question?
Well, I'll wait till afterwards.
Okay. For Jackson,
Uh-oh.
Um,
You have nothing, right?
no, I have a couple things. Don't give up ground in cross X.
No, you won.
Like
do you mean?
when he asked you the question, did you
Oh.
know that?
Okay.
What was your question?
Which
Where
one?
I
I
said
don't know, you
got
said
me
like,
there.
did you know that
Oh,
the
fixing
Oh.
slavery for slavery.
I
or
said,
whatever.
would you deem it immoral to use the draft, or use slavery to?
They used the
No, it
draft
was
as
the
I
a-
one
didn't say
before
that.
that. It was,
Well, use
yeah,
the
I
draft,
remember.
change slavery or
That
abolish
didn't
it.
Point
Yeah.
is, just don't give up ground in cross X.
Just say yes or no.
Yes. Or no. Um, yeah, you want to now. Obviously, you don't want to like say you knew something when you didn't know something, but try and think of a way to phrase it so that it doesn't sound like you're just ignorant on the topic. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You had really good arguments in your speech. I really liked them. I'm going to talk about them in a second. Just make sure that you drive them home, okay?
Okay.
Show me why they're important, okay? And kind of like Sarah, explain them more.
Okay.
I know that's hard when you're negative because you don't have prepared speeches and stuff. But
And you're shaking. You can't even see.
what?
I said when you're shaking so hard you can't even read.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm looking at the flow now. Let me see here. Okay, your two arguments of violating the Constitution and more wars, those should be labeled as disadvantages. And I really liked them. They were good.
No.
No.
Stop.
They were really good, okay? You had evidence underneath each one. What was the evidence under disadvantage two, or more wars? Where was that from, though?
Oh, Washington, the Washington Post?
No, it was like 10th
No,
Amendment
it's
Center
on-
or something.
10thAmendmentCenter.com.
Okay.
We both brought that
He
up.
read stuff that I'd already read.
What is that place?
It's just basically, I mean, I looked over
It's the
part of
10th
it.
Amendment Center.
And it talks about, I don't know, I mean,
Look it up,
sorry,
somebody look it
like,
up.
I looked at it and you can look at it,
Yeah.
Cross-X.
So,
It can be attacked.
They
I think I know
didn't.
which
They didn't
argument.
make this argument.
10thamendment.com?
I might have.
Okay, I think
Yeah.
I know what article you're talking about.
The affirmative team didn't make this argument, saying that, you know, what is the 10th Amendment Center? Like, who are these people writing this article?
And
if
like,
they
I
had made, if they had made that argument, then you guys need to know.
Okay.
It has
You
an
need
X
to say,
and an
here's
amendment
why
or
they're
whatever on it.
experts on this topic.
For 10?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that one, yeah.
Because, yeah, we had, yeah, okay, never mind.
Colin Jackson.
And then your
I
volunteer,
don't think I read it, but I know
your point about volunteer force being effective, and something about it not being a good cause. Do you remember those points?
Nothing
It was in the
God.
ABS. I'm helping you.
So you said that the volunteer force was effective.
Oh,
Your
ABS,
points?
whatever.
One of your points was the volunteer force was effective.
This isn't it. This.
Oh, do we have another one
Yeah,
for
we have
their?
two. Oh, what? Oh, it was just It was just at the bottom. It was Do you need me to cite that?
Did I say
No,
A
no.
or B
So
the
did
whole
you
time?
find
No,
it?
he said
There's
A.
Oh.
the volunteer force effective and something about not a good cause. I can't
And then
remember
he
what that was.
corrected himself.
Oh,
Like,
it was your
I'm
response
sorry,
to harm number 2 about external wars. Those would be solvency points. Because you're saying their
Well-
plan's not going to solve anything because what we have right now is already effective.
In the outline of the 2 and C, don't you bring up the status quo?
And I also
I'm going to talk
Afterwards?
about that in
I
a
also
second.
brought up the definitions like in the end, and I was like, oh, I should have. I just like
Oh,
went
and then
all over.
You
it.
guys didn't ask for a 1AC.
I
he
know.
was
I
hitting.
totally
I
forgot.
told him to.
I
No,
told
no,
you guys. You
But
forget.
is it if you ask for it, if you don't ask for it in the first question,
Yeah.
you're not allowed to ask for it? Is
No,
that
no, you
no?
can ask
You-
for it. They could ask for it in the second
Oh,
about
ask
sex.
for
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to sound.
You could
Okay.
ask for it.
Now,
You could have given it to him.
you guys in your in your 1AC, you guys provide a criterion
Oh, yeah.
of net benefits, and you specifically said whichever team saves more money. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at that, and I'm trying to base the round off of that point right there. Okay. You guys messed up because you didn't bring it up again.
Bring what up again?
And
the
I have a
criterion.
question. I have an
In your second
rebuttal.
speech.
Oh.
He didn't respond to it, which means when you got up, William, you could have said, okay, they agree with our criterion, so we need to look at which team saves more money. Okay.
And actually, we save more money because the ABF
Oh,
is $6 million.
Yeah, here, hold on. Now, because you brought up the criterion and they didn't respond to it, you guys still win the criterion.
oh yeah.
They dropped it. So you
Oh,
guys still.
wait, even if we don't have evidence?
We almost brought up another criterion, but it was different from theirs, and that I wasn't sure if it was like,
Can you do that?
You can. Yes, you don't have to have evidence for a criterion.
because it was
Okay.
one we just
But
made
like,
up and said.
if we could refute theirs, because I did research and it's not the, all volunteer force is way less than $35
Didn't know you
billion.
could attack their
Then
criteria.
if you have that argument, stay under their criterion. Agree with
Okay,
it.
but we didn't have the evidence, so.
Oh, so
Okay.
you can't. Oh, but I didn't know you could attack the criteria. I thought it's just like, because I heard them say, well, we'd like you to
Automatically
instead
attack
judge it on this.
So you can either agree with their criterion or you can disagree and provide an alternate one.
Would you just say we disagree with it?
No, you say we would like to provide an alternate criterion, and then you have to give reasons for why it's better than theirs.
Huh, okay.
You can't just say, here's our other criterion, because if you just say that, then they can get up and say they provide no reason, no reason to
Get
prefer.
free.
And William would do that.
Yeah, and then they would win, pretty much.
Wow. Just 'cause it's
So technically, based on the criterion, we won.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you won the criterion argument. You won the criterion argument. So I'm using your criterion in this round
Okay.
to decide it.
And if they brought up a criterion, you would have to choose between our criterions.
I would have to decide who argued better for the criterion. Okay, William. So I liked your observation, your clarification point at the beginning. That was good. Topicality was a good response too. Your topicality argument wasn't that great.
Which one? Oh yeah, the one
If you
overseas
really wanted
definition.
if you really wanted to run that, you need to have a definition of both
Reinstate and reinstitute.
and
That's-
show exactly.
But we didn't
Why
know
they're
they
We
could
had a
use
bunch of
reinstate.
other terms.
Well, yeah, that
in
was
background research,
our
but
bad,
we never
but-
thought to look up reinstate because we didn't.
Well, and that
So-
was
You
my
should
bad
read the
because
definitions
I
first.
just assumed it was the
We
same
do.
thing, and I didn't look at the actual.
But here.
But Madeline, it was really good how you said that they're basically the same.
Because
No,
we
he said
didn't,
that, 'cause
we
Jeff
didn't
asked.
have reinstate. We had somewhere here.
We have reinstates right here.
'Cause I'm walking.
Reinstate is to begin using or dealing with.
Oh, so
Yeah,
that's
it's,
completely
Did you guys
different.
have a
Never
page
mind.
like of all
Yeah.
definitions? Okay.
you should do
Wait, the definition.
Well, we did. We just didn't have like a law.
Here's the definition page.
Oh, okay.
You could have asked for our definition. Could they have asked for a
I'm just
definition
gonna ask for
page
like
as
your
well?
whole
Yeah.
paper, all your papers.
Which if you're gonna run that,
If it has the definition they want on it.
Like
They can't just be
reinstate.
like, can you give us all your definitions?
But anything
No, no,
that you give us, we'll just say we didn't know
Well,
that.
you could have asked, can I see your definition for reinstate, and I would have given you that.
You
That's
have
why I
one?
forgot to put the case. You're supposed
Yeah.
to put the definitions are available upon request.
Really?
I-
They are?
Well,
You
that sounds
can't
like
do
you're
that,
supposed to
yeah.
tell me.
I didn't.
Definitions are available.
All right.
upon
Anyhow.
Negative.
Oh, you were gonna talk about my
Oh,
argument.
sorry.
Well, I'm talking about topicality for a second. Yeah.
What do you think?
Don't run that unless you have both definitions and you can show really clearly how
I
they're
was kind of.
I don't know because
different.
Well,
Yeah, 'cause
I
that's-
asked
Too
her
soon.
cross-ex. and
Yeah,
From
no,
an
it's
easier
fine, but
variant.
just for future reference.
negative would be easier to respond to.
Okay, still talking to Will.
Yeah.
Your response, I really liked your response to solvency point one. You said not enough soldiers. This from the Department of Defense, so that's a really good source. And then I liked your responses to the what I labeled as disadvantage. How you said it didn't violate the Constitution. Your argument about the using the draft to pass the 13th Amendment was good. It was a little confusing. So if you could maybe explain it, I know you don't have time, but if you
Yeah.
could have explained that more, made it a little clearer. I understood what you were getting at eventually, a few minutes
Yeah.
later. And then I liked your response, your really response. That was good. Okay, your advantage number 3. So the advantage you brought up, which would be 3, because you had 2 in your case.
Right. Yeah.
You labeled it as general support Fed. Did you mean general support AF?
Federal, like-
I meant the federal government. Wait,
Well, it sounded like in that evidence that they disagreed with what the federal government's doing.
right, but that would be the outcome of passing our plan is they would support the Fed. That's how I meant that.
Okay.
Because right now they don't because how they're being used, and then
in foreign wars.
So then maybe
Pass
you
the
would say,
plan.
I'm going to bring up another harm, talk
Yeah.
about why they don't like it, and the impact is an advantage. Or link our plan, impact, advantage.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now, the 2NC, Jackson, yes. Okay, your speech it was actually really, really good. You had a lot of good points, but you need to emphasize them more. And you need to be able to